so I was very interested. And you see they have different views. Their definition of progressivism means something different, but still, just because of the outlets that they have to express it, they tend to go to the Democratic Party.
And if I can add one thing, as it relates to being progressive, you don't, like, my personal opinion is that you don't necessarily have to come in and blow up the system. You know what I'm saying? You can build or work within the system, because of course there are some solid, appropriate things happening with the system as a whole. You know, the logistics on how it functions and X, Y, and Z. So my personal, we have this bomber over here that just wants to roll everything up. I think that you could pull some of the inefficiencies out of the system and innovate from that perspective. And that approach would probably be a little bit more welcoming than you guys don't know what you're doing. You need to scrap this thing and start from scratch. So just
do a whole hour session.
Yes.
Multi-hour session.
I know we got to wrap up, but if I was just when you were kind of talking about the World Caucus, as you kind of explore through NLC and talk to other chapters, meet other chapters, we're nowhere near there yet, but plan to attend the national convention when it comes, because you'll get to see that different NLC chapters, one, look completely different from ours. Our chapter is very diverse, very inclusive, and so some of the priorities that you see folks working on, we don't have to fight for inclusiveness in our chapter, where a lot of other chapters that are in rural areas, they're fighting for inclusion and trying to make sure that they have a diverse class. So you'll kind of see that definition of progressiveness change within NLC as a whole anyway, just because of the people that are talking about it and how that conversation is formed.
So a couple quick fire questions from the audience. Start with you.
I actually had a question about the educators, for the educators on the panel. You're talking about kind of progressive changes and system overhauls and the ideal of having resources for everyone, every single student. How does that really play out? And this might be a little bit naive of me, but how does that really play out when the foundations of what these students are being taught are so outdated, in the sense of just what the textbooks are even teaching them, the topics that you're allowed to kind of touch upon, and things like that. So how do you kind of grapple with inclusion in a not so inclusive system? There's a lot of inclusion.
So we all know that the system is designed and it's not in favor of minority students, right? That's like the foundation of the system. But there are very small systematic ways to try to kind of what Cam said, trying to embed, right? So for me, maybe 6 months ago, I did an interview for NPR where they talked about the Michigan legislation about teaching African American history and making it a part of African American history, but also shifting what type of African American, just not Malcolm X and not Martin Luther King, that's not all of Black history, right? And so for me, I was in support of that piece of legislation, understanding that it does contradict some other beliefs that I have, but understanding I will always vote in favor of that legislation, right? So then I'm looking for candidates locally who support, and I might not know them, right? But I'll phone bank for them and things of that sort. So at least if that gets passed, I'm one step closer to making sure that my students have some of the things that they need, right? So it's at a small scale, and it's also, quite frankly, hiring like-minded individuals, right? Now, everyone shouldn't think like you, or everyone shouldn't be a millennial, right? We need everyone at the table, but I'm also very intentional on who's being hired and things of that sort, or if someone throws that resume out, I'm pushing and asking, why did you throw that resume out, right? So that they can think about their biases that exist and how this indirectly will directly affect our children. Did I answer your question?
So, and I'll just add on to that. So my original background was mechanical engineer, process improvement engineer. Hey. Basically, I worked in manufacturing systems, and I was streamlining systems. The new kind of thing is like lean manufacturing, and then we have like traditional manufacturing. Anyway, so like you're talking about, you have a set system that's in place, but completely starting and trashing out the system is not going to work. Like you have to, it's going to take too much money, time, resources, whatever. Like there are things that are working. We got to find like the little things that aren't working in those areas. And you touched on as well, like I'm in math and science education, that's my thing. The biggest thing, math and science education, the kids can't go out and even compute stuff at the store, you know, like in their head, and they're not ready for a career afterwards. So like that is my focus. My focus is, you know, making sure that at this one individual school that I'm working with, that the kids, you know, leave with these skills, that they can go home and do a sales, you know, like 30% off. They can calculate those things. And like if they're going into the STEM field, then they're prepared when they go to school or when they go to career to have these like different things. So I can't change the whole system, but I can change my one part, you know, that I'm working on. And I feel like I can make a bigger impact now. I go from this school to this school to this school, you know, making changes. So.
As an advocate for education, simply to answer your question, no, I mean, I agree with everything that's in the textbook, but every kid should have a textbook.
That's so profound.
So I have Steven, then I have Bruce, and then maybe we'll get into English special if there's no other cohort.
Hi everyone. One of the main criticisms of millennials that I hear a lot is like that land press people in general is that we like we're very quick to move to action, very urgent, we're always looking for the next thing, always willing to just like jump on board, move in the right direction. And some people are like, as you were saying, like more like slower in the process, but more resistant to change. So I guess my question is, how do you balance that? Because there's some benefit of being like very quick pace, like you're urgent, you're trying to get things done quickly. There's some drawbacks, is maybe you're moving into action too quickly without consulting the right people or getting the right people at the table, or doing it in a way that'll get people who are holding the positions of power, who maybe are a little bit more older or conservative, maybe moving too quickly and not consulting them, and then getting the change you need to happen because it's going to be like shot down when it gets to that type of thing. So I guess my question is, how do you know when you're ready to move into the action phase? How do you know when you're ready for that?
I'll take that. And this goes back to technology. Like we're living in a time and a space when everything is instant, right? Which is different from previously. So, and it's my personal opinion, as it relates to the planning process. Like everything is all about, you know, using technical jargon, pivot, proof of concept, you know. So those are like the proof of concept piece. You can find out if your concept works in today's environment based on the internet and media and social media and all these, you know, having the ability to access a bunch of people really fast to find out if this is something that even has any type of traction, right? So I'm from the school of do and pivot, right? Because what happened is that you don't know until you do it what works. So you can sit back and you can plan and you can do all of these things, you know, and think that you have this perfect business plan, right? And then you implement it and come to find out that the market says, we don't like it. Now you've wasted a year and a half of developing this business plan and doing all this market research and, you know, doing all these things to kind of say, okay, I know as soon as I launch this perfect mousetrap that I'm gonna be a billionaire. But the reality to that is that might not be the case. So does it make sense to waste a year and a half of your time on a planning process in which you could have took a month or 2 months and did proof of concept, seeing where you needed to tweak, seeing where you needed to change, and then kind of build on that to get to that perfect mousetrap?
There goes my mousetrap side gigs. I have Bruce and then I have Louise.
I think in terms of politics and like what the changes that we're seeing, like I think it's like one question that came to me during this last election was like, it isn't just about like disrupting the wider political system, but it's like kind of like almost internal within the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I know, and you know, I'm gonna go out. I was really supporting the Abdul's campaign for governor, and to me, that was a very progressive disruption of the system, right? And what we were hearing from the Democratic leadership in the state was, that's too much, we can't do it, Michigan can't handle it, he won't win because of who he is, and these things. And so like how, I think like as progressives, how do we navigate that, and how do we push even beyond, right? Because at the same time, that same system that is telling us a brown person can't run is also led by white folks, right? So how do we come out and disrupt that?
I love that question. And it goes,
You want it?
I do. And to me, and it goes back to something that Stephen asked. So I think one of the criticisms that, at least I think my criticism of the progressive movement and progressives in general, is that we don't spend enough time learning the rules. I think one of the things that conservatives do extremely well is they learn the rules and they use those rules to either protect themselves or to disenfranchise other people. So for me, being a progressive and disrupting internally is about learning those rules, mastering those techniques, and then using those to our own advantage. So we can change the way candidates are nominated in the Democratic Party to produce a different outcome that we all desire. To me, that's one example of how we do that. With just being mad and being upset and complaining about it and having a protest out in the corner, that doesn't drive change to me. And as somebody that's on the inside of policy change, I know you can scream as loud as you want on the corner, we can close the window and move forward, because that voice really doesn't matter unless you understand how to use the power you have to produce a result. So for me, that's the answer, is learning how the system works now, which is, and it goes back to what you're saying. Learn the system first. Don't just throw a bomb in there and throw it away. Learn it, figure out exactly what's causing the issues, and then change those to your own benefit.
All right, honey.
So, Watson 2032. So, we'll have one more question from the cohort, and then we'll want to wrap up so we can give it back to our lead. I stretched us a little bit because we started late, but hopefully it'll work out.
So when you're trying to create change or implement change within your respective industry, how do you know when to stop? Because me personally, if somebody tells me no, I don't accept it. I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until it's done. But I know that I'm starting to realize that sometimes you have to like stop, but I haven't. How do you know when to stop and move on or attack it from a different perspective?
I think that, and just like sharing, like I used to be in the classroom, if I was a classroom teacher, was gonna do my thing. Like, I think just my personal, I wasn't gonna be able to make the change I wanted to be as a classroom teacher. Like, I realized that. So I just went at it a different way. Like, I can affect curriculum and I can affect, you know, coaching from the outside way. So I think that it's different. You know what I'm saying? I could have like been a teacher longer, like, you know, like you can definitely stay in something if you stay a few years or you're doing the same thing, you're not making the same results, that's called insanity, right? So if you want a certain outcome, you don't have to go at it that same exact way, right? You can always find a different way. Talk to other people, see what they've done in that realm. What is another way to get to what you want? But I wouldn't change what you want. I wouldn't change the end goal. Like, we're not gonna not want brown people in the office. Like, we're not gonna change that goal. We might need to change our strategy. We're not going to take somebody else's playbook. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, and like maybe you need to appeal to a more, you know, wider audience to get, you know, what we want. But I wouldn't say like you give up ever. You just might give up that strategy.
So can we give our panelists a big any closing thoughts?
Yeah. So, and this is kind of like a NLC challenge. I know a lot of times I definitely commend all of you for taking, you know what I'm saying, your precious time out to be a part of NLC, to set your weekends aside, you know, Saturday, Sunday, for a 6-month stretch in order to be a part of this wonderful organization. My one challenge is that this is not a resume builder for you, that you're part of this NLC cohort in order to challenge yourself, in order to engage, not only with the cohorts and with NLC, but engage with the system. So a lot of times we get complacent and life is easy because you go to work and, you know, you might have a family and, you know, you're kind of doing your family thing. But I press you to do a little bit more. And I think if everybody does a little bit more, somewhat engaged in politics, whether it's on the policy side, whether it's assisting someone with their campaign, whether it's phone making or cutting a check. You know, it's all kind of ways that you can engage, but like figure out what your lane is, but just make sure that you do engage. And that's from the top down, NLC, community, politics, you know, kind of really engage, and I challenge all of you to do that.
Thank you, John. Anybody else?
Yeah, just really quickly, I want to state for the record that Bedrock is a responsible person of the city of Detroit. And what I meant by what I said is that the innovative approach to the downtown experience is pushing the boundaries of our current regulatory structures, and it's causing us to innovate.
Way to clean up.
Unless there's any other closing thoughts?
I support Chad's comments and also DeAndre's actions. NLC is supposed to be a safe space because in order for us to really tackle some of the issues that are taking place in our city and talk about how we really fix some of these things, we have to be able to be open and honest with each other. So like that really is a good conversation to have, because if you're looking at it from both perspectives, you get to go back and figure out, hey, how can we do this in our company? You get to go back and say, hey, maybe we can push it this way. And that's why we're all supposed to work together. That's why we represent different industries. That's why we have different interests, but we're supposed to have one common goal, and that's moving our city forward. I may not get to see you all until your graduation just because of my work schedule, but I absolutely want to say that we're blessed to have you. I pray that you get everything out of this that you're supposed to, and you absolutely will if you keep an open mind and an open heart. Please do not come here no matter what your career background is, feeling that you know everything, because we all have something to learn. We all do. And everyone that's putting this experience together for you is a volunteer. Nobody's getting paid. So we have to meet beforehand to get you here, and then we have to be here with you to make sure that you end it successfully. So thank you to the executive committee that's in leadership, and I hope that you really enjoy your experience with NLC.
Thank you all so much. This is a wonderful panel. I have one last rhetorical question for everyone. We talked a lot about the battle. After this panel, while you're doing your break and getting things together before lead, I want you to think about victory. So after this, the question I was going to ask you that we didn't get to, but I thought I'd actually just give it to our cohort, is I want you to take a moment to imagine progressive Detroit. That we are there. You wake up in a more progressive city. What's the first thing that changed? And with that, thank you all so much. Thank you.